Mark resides in a small farm in Tasuki with his best friend Catherine and their perfectly behaved dogs, Sage and Shirako. I'd like to invite Mark up now to speak. Thank you.
Sage is the perfect dog. We actually still have issues with Shirako. Pull that out a little bit. No wonder I can't see anything. There you are. It's a pretty interesting sounding bio. I always feel like I should fill in. I have trouble tying my shoes in the morning. Pretty much every morning. You gotta love the Santa Fe Waldorf School for selecting a geek to give the commencement address to this class. It's a pretty small town, so I actually know through the rumor mill that I wasn't the first choice. Beverly reached out to Barack Obama, but he was at Morehouse College in Atlanta. Michelle Obama was, of course, afraid of getting heckled. Congressman Lujan, of course, over at the Indian School. And then Elliot reached out to the Kardashians, I know, but Kim, Chloe, and Chris were already doing Harvard, Yale, and Princeton, so that was clearly out of bounds. Seriously, it's a great honor to be asked to give the commencement address to this class. And I do know why they selected me, actually. I have given 3 talks, as Beverly said, over to these guys, and they mostly went over. I mean, the first one was on the sinking of the Deepwater Horizon in the Gulf of Mexico. That was a really uplifting speech. Wouldn't you agree? The second one, what did I give the second one on? Oh, the second one was on Santa Fe's decision to build its water supply system underneath a nuclear waste dump. That one got a fire under them. The third one was on applied complex system science and problem solving, and that one was a total bomb. So I've decided I'd go ahead and give that lecture again tonight. If that's okay with you. What do you say, Gratz? They're not up for it. This is called an engineer's approach to self-actualization. Grads, do you feel understood? Do you feel seen? Do you feel like your voice is heard? When someone is talking to you, how intently do you listen? Do you look into their eyes? I think the Santa Fe Waldorf School has provided you with an amazing environment for learning awareness and communication skills. And that's a good thing because your stage is about to get a whole lot bigger as you prepare to exit Santa Fe. In the few minutes that I am honored to have with you tonight, I'd like to share a few stories from my own experience as they relate to awareness and communication, in hopes that they may provide insight. I have a friend named Michael, who I've known for about 20 years. And soon after we met, excuse me on this microphone, by the way, we were sitting in my living room having a conversation, and a song I liked came on the radio. I jumped up and went over to the piano to see if I could figure out how to play the song. And on my way to the piano, I said, I wonder what key this is in. It's in B flat, Michael responded, matter-of-factly. I didn't know quite what to think of that, so I sat down at the piano and played along for a few minutes. And when it was over, I turned around and said, Michael, that song was actually in the key of B natural. Without hesitation, he replied, your piano's out of tune. Michael has what musicians call perfect pitch. As a musician, I want you to know that I hate him. But perfect pitch is barely the beginning of Michael's gifts. I once brought him to a party and watched him stand all by himself, staring off into space, tracking several conversations at once. I was marveling at what he was doing, and then I got an idea. I was standing on the other side of the room, a room filled with the din of party conversation, and in a normal speaking voice, as if addressing someone right next to me, I asked, "Do you want something to drink?" Politely raising his voice so that I could hear him from across the room, Michael replied, "I'll have a Coke." Michael's auditory gifts, his abilities to hear things so accurately and to process what he hears so efficiently, extend equally to his conversational skills. He asks a lot of questions, not out of politeness, but because he's genuinely interested in knowing who you are and how you're doing. He listens carefully and he measures what you say to make sure he has captured the essence of what you are trying to convey. And he has total recall of what was discussed. I hate him for that too. Michael's true gift is that when you have a conversation with him, you feel as if he understands who you are and that he accepts you for who you are. When I talk to Michael, I feel seen in the broadest sense of the word. The irony of feeling seen by Michael, as you may have already guessed, is that he's blind. Before he was even born, he developed a disease that prevented his eyes from fully developing. He's never seen anything in his life in the literal sense. His brain, spared the laborious task of processing visual images, reallocated itself to other matters, particularly the processing and storage of auditory information. In effect, he hears so well that he not only sees, he can see things in people that others can't. His ability to understand who I am results directly from this capacity to listen so deeply. There are few things in life that feel better over the long run than feeling as if you are truly understood and accepted by others. The desire to be understood, deeply understood, and accepted is perhaps the most fundamental force that drives the direction of our lives. Self-actualization, the process of nurturing the unique essence of who you are on the inside until it is expressed outwardly in every aspect of your being, is the ultimate goal. Because when who you are is readily visible, it's on display for others to see and enjoy, and this is what we seek. So I want to posit to you today, dear grads, is that what I wanted to posit to you today is that the surest path to self-actualization lies in understanding and accepting others. This sentiment has been canonized in so many ways it feels a bit simplistic or cliche, even for a commencement address. It's reflected in everything from the do unto others commandment right down to the old saying, the best way to have a friend is to be one. It's even the basis of the prisoner's dilemma, the thought exercise where two gang members are imprisoned and separated in solitary confinement. Do you know this? And each has to decide whether to betray the other in exchange for a shorter sentence. There's a mathematical solution, and you can look it up. Or I could explain it if you want me to. Probably not. But it might as well be trivial, the math, because life always returns a higher dividend when we act primarily on behalf of others. That part is simple enough. What isn't nearly as simple is learning the art of accepting and understanding others. We all know someone who has a gift for it, but as Michael shows us, it's not a limited endeavor. We can always learn to do better. The role of disability, I think, in this story is an interesting one. There's a corollary to Michael's story for people who can't hear. The part of their brain that would normally be dedicated to processing auditory information gets reallocated to other senses, including sight. When you're communicating with someone who is deaf, they aren't just reading your lips and watching you sign. They're interpreting your facial expressions and your body language. You need to be careful because in all likelihood you are saying more than you realize. The art of communicating with one another may be more developed in indigenous cultures as well. My friend Bill spent 8 years in a tribal village in the Republic of Palau, way out in the Western Pacific. While he was there, he learned to speak the Palauan language. And like many indigenous languages, Palauan relies on facial expression to fully convey meaning. For this reason, Palauans look directly at each other while they speak. They have to, because if they don't get the verbal clues, they don't fully get the meaning of what's going on. While Bill was there, a multinational corporation was busily negotiating with Palau to install a factory on one of the islands. The issue of whether to allow the factory was to be put to a vote, but the Palauan people voted it down. The terms under which the factory would be built were revised and it was put to another vote. But again, the people voted it down. The company launched an intensive outreach campaign replete with beach parties and barbecued chicken to spread the message of how beneficial to the Palauan people it would be to have this factory. The islanders turned out in droves for the beer and chicken, but at the ballot box, they continued to vote no. Finally, at one of the parties, Bill watched a corporate officer trying to convince a villager to vote in favor of the factory, but the villager just kept laughing. Exasperated, the officer finally asked him what was so funny. Whenever you talk about how beneficial this is going to be for me, what your eyes are saying doesn't match your words. When you read faces all your life, I guess you get pretty good at it. I don't know any of the details on either sides of the argument in this case, but it's mighty powerful to be able to sense when there's an incongruity between what is being said verbally and what is being said non-verbally. The same type of incongruity can occur between words and tone. Have you ever listened to yourself say something and realized that it wasn't convincing at all, not even to yourself? Psychotherapists are specialists at communicating who you are, and mine was brilliant. Margaret would say to me, "Did you hear that? Say that again the way you just said it, and listen to it." I really like living in Fort Wayne. Try this experiment sometime, it's fascinating. So the key when you're listening, when you're really actively listening, is eyes, words, and tone. Are they all the same? Do they match, or no? If being understood and accepted is our primary desire and seeing others is the path that gets us there, why aren't we better at it? Ironically, the use of communications technology would seem to be one of the major culprits. Computers, television, smartphones, iPods, and the like. Without passing judgment here, is it only me that thinks that the stuff that helps us commune has all sitting at home alone? The shift from first-hand to second-hand communications may have brought efficiency, but it has come at a price of isolation. We stare at screens and push buttons, and when we do, goods and services change hands, messages are exchanged, and enemies are hunted down and killed. And all of it happens without the opportunity to look the person in the eye you are interacting with, so you can't possibly understand who they are. Before all these inventions, business deals were done face-to-face. Contracts were carefully drawn by hand, and the parties sat down together to negotiate terms. When all this was settled, they would look each other in the eye and shake hands. I'm not a Luddite, and I don't want to over-glamorize the past, but there was a certain advantage to this. Gaining awareness is tough stuff, I know, because when we talk about sharpening your senses and understanding others and self-actualizing, what we're really talking about is becoming more sensitive and compassionate. Sensitivity and compassion grow out of quiet places, and learning them is sort of like learning how to tap into magic. We could all use a little magic. I've had the amazing fortune in my life of being surrounded somehow by people who understand magic. My college girlfriend, Joni, could contemplate things by closing her eyes and turning her head slightly, and after a moment she would open her eyes and say, "It rings true." It rings true? I'd never heard anyone say it and mean it so literally. I have no doubt that Joni could hear the ring of truth in the same way Michael could hear the ring of a B-flat. Another voice that has stuck with me all the years belongs to a brilliant engineer I worked with named Gopal. He was at my first engineering job out of college. Whenever Gopal heard a technical argument he wasn't sure about, he would come over to my desk and bounce it off me. "Well, what do you think?" Or I would say, "Well, what do you think?" And Gopal would fold his arms and look off in the distance, and in a heavy East Indian accent he would reply, "Sounds like a bull to me." That's the PG version of the comment. I can't begin to tell you how often Gopal's voice pops up in my head, especially these days, and I always heed it when it's done. When it does, there's a lot of bull out there. And I've been lucky to have a gifted bit of magic myself. I remember the exact moment I realized I would repurpose my life to try to stop global warming. I was at a big energy conference in Albuquerque. There were hundreds of booths and a giant exhibit hall, and it was crowded with people walking around everywhere. I was standing in front of a booth, and on the table in front of me was this brochure, and I was flipping through the pages, and I came upon this graph showing the Earth's atmosphere over the last 120,000 years. And the graph had this big spike at the end. And when I saw it, I couldn't stop staring at it. And the room, this giant exhibition hall, conference hall, went completely silent as I was staring at it, except for this buzzing sound in my head. At that moment, I knew what my life path would be. Now, I was 39 at this time, so it's only been my life for the past 14 years. Well, these are all my stories, and what we really need to do is send these grads off for their own stories. So here's the quick summary. You know your senses can be sharpened. With a little practice, you can train yourself to hear like a blind guy and to study someone's eyes like a native Palauan. With all the new things you'll be seeing and hearing, you'll gain a deeper understanding and acceptance of those around you, which will somehow help you begin to self-actualize such that others can see your true nature, which is all you ever wanted anyway. Got it? Want to repeat that back? We'll call it Mark Sardella's Guide to Life. The real question is, how will any of this help you when you get from the field house to the locker room, or from the calculus class to the library on a campus with 25,000 students? It may not. But if it's more convenient, here's the takeout version of what I'm trying to say. When you arrive at your school and you feel overwhelmed, assuming you're going to some giant campus, whatever campus you're going to, sometime when you find yourself alone, sit quietly and create a little quiet place in your mind that you can go to. Know that you can go there anytime you need to, and that in that place you can ask any question. And if you allow it, if you're really paying attention, you can ask for little key pieces of information to guide you on anything you want. The pieces of information are like those little rock cairns you find along hiking trails. The cairns always designate a place on the trail where there are two paths you can choose from. And when you get to these cairns and you're choosing a path, be very quiet so that you can hear like Michael. And study the paths. Look them in the eye like you're an indigenous Palauan. And make sure your mind is still so your preconceived notions don't color your thinking. Just mind the cairns. You're going to be fine. Thank you.